name is Bubba Stallcup, CEO, president, and founder of Love Thy Nerd, and I am here with my good friend, Brannon Hollingsworth, and you are listening to the Nerd Culture Ministry Underground podcast, where we are dedicated to raising up and training the next generation of nerd culture ministers and missionaries. We are doing all this leading up to, in April of 2026, leading up to NCMS, the Nerd Culture Ministry Summit. I would like to tell you right now, if you are planning on going, Brannon is going to be a speaker there. So if you like anything you hear today, come back and hear more of that later at the Nerd Culture Ministry Summit in Colorado Springs at the Garden of the Gods in Glen Eyrie. It's just such a beautiful place. Registration will be open probably in the next couple of days, depending on when you listen to this. If you're listening anytime past September the 8th, it's open. Go register. We'd love to have you. Any other questions, go to ncmsummit.com. Brannon, what is up, man? The bills are paid. We're ready to go now.
What's up, brother? What's up? Good to see you, Bubba. Hey, man, I didn't know this was underground podcasting. I would have worn like a cool T-shirt or something.
Oh, yeah. Like a crew or like a cutoff, maybe like a sidewards tilted cap.
Exactly. Yeah. You have to let me know next time. So
I was told that all this stuff started out of the Kansas City underground movement stuff, and
really?
Which I had no idea. I'm in Texas, bro. Like that's too far north for me to have any understanding of. But
that's right. It's above the Mason-Dixon line.
So. It's way above the Mason-Dixon line. That Mason-Dixon line gives me problems, honestly. I've got friends that are out in like the Louisville, Kentucky area, and they call themselves Southerners. And if you're one of those people, I love you so much.
Yeah, praise God.
That's just not how directions work. And so like that's way north. That's way north. But anyway, I digress. Hey, Brannon, will you tell us just a little bit about yourself, who you are, and kind of what brought you to this place?
Yeah, sure. My name is Brannon Hollingsworth, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer and Chief Creative Officer over at Brainy Pixel Productions. And Brainy is a Christian animation and production studio. We do everything from very simple illustration and logo design all the way to feature film visual effects and everything in between. So we love glorifying God by being creative, and yeah, would love to talk more about that today.
Yeah, and we're going to get into Brainy Pixel. I promise you. That's like
cool.
That's one of the meat things, but it is not the thing that we want to talk about. We want to give you guys some time to understand who these people are in nerd culture ministry. And it's important to understand that there are shades of what nerd culture ministry actually is. And so, Brannon, let's kind of step it back just a little bit and help people understand just about who you are. Like, tell me, like, when did you know, you mentioned, being a creative. When did you know that you were creative?
So for me, it actually was in the fifth grade. So I lived in Texas for a brief period of time, mostly lived in Alabama my entire life, but lived in Texas for a brief period. And when I was in the fifth grade, I had a teacher who encouraged us to write a short story as part of our English lessons. And everybody in the class was like, oh, but I was like a little bit excited. I was like, wow, this sounds interesting. And so I'd always loved stories and loved creating my own stories. Like when I'm playing with my Star Wars figures, like it never was just Star Wars, right? I always got my Transformers involved and my G.I. Joes and created my own
multiverse action going on.
I had multiverse before it was cool. And, and I would tell my own stories. I wouldn't just reenact the movies. And so I was really excited to write this story, and I did. And like everybody in the class loved it. The teacher thought it was really good. She said, I think you may have a future as a writer. And so that was the first, my earliest recollection of, hey, I think I could be a writer one day. This might be a neat thing. My parents, sadly, they were not believers, and they were not very supportive of that dream. And so I was constantly kind of battling against that and kicking against the goads. But really, ever since then, I started putting my thoughts on paper, whether it was in poetry or in prose, and began creating worlds and stories and characters, and have been doing it ever since. So for me, it was the fifth grade, middle of the fifth grade year of school. So
I think that's really cool. We call those I see and you statements, and we didn't make that up. We stole it from somebody else. But the fact that your teacher said to you, hey, Brannon, I see in you that you are a creative. Like, what did that do inside of you? Can you remember that feeling?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, not the greatest, upbringing, not the greatest relationship with my parents, and the family life was pretty rough. So I didn't really get a lot of that at home. So having it outside of the home, that kind of validation, that, yeah, you are something special, right? Or you are something unique, or, again, none of this was couched in a Christian worldview. But it was still enough to make me think, okay, well, maybe I do have a shot at this. It gave me a little bit of confidence. It gave me a little bit of validation, and a little bit of excitement, right, around this concept of writing. I knew really nothing about the art or anything. I'm in the 5th grade, for goodness sakes. But it gave me enough to kind of begin to kind of dig in and start pursuing it on my own. I started reading a lot more, stories. And even, I can even remember, like, going into middle school, I started checking out books from the library on writing as a craft and began trying to understand this thing. And I think it was probably that event in my life which gave me kind of begin to foment this passion that I have today for helping other Christian creatives, which is one of my huge things. And we can unpack that later. But I now like enabling Christian creatives, helping them to go and do what God has made them to do, utilize their gifts, skills, talents, and abilities to glorify the kingdom. It's one of my biggest passions today.
That's awesome. Yeah, and we at the Nerd Culture Ministry Collective, we share that. NCMS this year is all about onward, taking your idea from ideation to actualization. Like, how do you get up off your bohunkus and get out there and make something happen?
It's so important, all right, for multiple reasons, but one of the reasons why is I think that I believe that there's a movement amongst Christian creatives, and I think God wants to take back media for his kingdom. For thousands of years, the church led the world in science, in thought, in philosophy, in art, in expression. And at some point, kind of post Renaissance, we just kind of checked out, right? And we kind of retreated. And we stopped being influential in the world, and the enemy has filled that vacuum. We see that it's very, very prominent everywhere in the world now. But I really feel like over the last 6 years, being in this industry full time, where through all different mediums, right, not just animation, but comics and art and theater and video and film, right? God is moving people to create amazing things, not for their own glory, but for his glory and his gospel. And it's so important that we raise up this next generation and blow wind into their sails and go do what God has called you to do, because he has a reason for it. And it's his glory and his gospel. So it's absolutely mandatory that we must enable this next generation, or we could lose a whole generation of people.
Oh yeah, and it only takes one generation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
To kind of slip out of a zeitgeist and to kind of lose a lot of things.
Yeah.
If an entire generation moves in a direction, then that's where things are going. And so,
and I don't want to cast like this dark pall over the conversation, right? Because God can redeem that. I mean, the book of Chronicles is a great example of that in the Old Testament, where, I always call the book of Chronicles the original reboot, right? God is telling the people of Israel, hey, you've forgotten me, but I'm going to reiterate all these amazing things that I've done, so you'll trust me again, so you'll know that I'm faithful, so that you'll know that I love you and that I pursue you. So even if that one generation slides kind of into kind of darkness, through God, we can pull them back. So I don't want to make this all a downer conversation. It's an up conversation. So
no, but I think that the idea is that we see it throughout Scripture. If you're following, especially the Old Testament is like really good about pointing out major flaws and blunders in the people of God. You see that people who were following him wholeheartedly left him, mm-hmm. and in turn left the ways of God, and everything kind of went to pot.
Yep.
And so we understand as Christians, and those of you who aren't Christians, hey, welcome. We love you. Welcome in. But from a Christian worldview, the idea that we're trying to kind of we're trying to move forward on the path of God. while not choosing to, what I would call, deliberately making God our enemy by moving in opposite directions and, different pathways that he would have us on, or that his will is moving him. And so I think it's really interesting that you're using media and digital media and, art and creativity as a way to hold the line. This wasn't in any of the show notes that I was talking with you about, but how do you see the things that you all are doing and that you're doing, personally, as like modern day parables? Like, how are you guys kind of working in that same venue?
Yeah, I think it all comes down to understanding the power of story, right? We see this so many times. We as Christians kind of get this mixed up, right? Where we see Jesus use parables over and over and over again. But what we forget is that when Jesus was telling these stories, they were just agricultural anecdotes, right? They didn't have this weight and this kind of holy reverence that we apply to them today. Jesus was just looking around and telling a story based on what these people understood to help reveal truth to them. And so now we look back and go, oh, well, if you don't tell a parable like Jesus told it, exactly like he told it, then it's not profitable, right? It's not going to help anybody. But that's the exact opposite of what Jesus did. He just told a story and then had a point to it. And that's what we have to do today as Christian creatives. We have to use the power of story, great characters, amazing visuals done at the best quality we can, so that we can affect the hearts and minds of people all over the world. That's what story does, right? And one of the problems with Christian media over the last several decades is that Christians chose to sacrifice story on the altar of the message. And the message is the gospel, and the message is absolutely critical, and I'm not going to demean that. But what you can't do is you can't turn your story into pandering. You can't take your story and turn it into propaganda. Ironically, that's what we're seeing with the left right now in mainstream media, is they have a worldview, they have a specific point that they're trying to make, and they're sacrificing their stories on the altar of their message. And you see people going, I don't want to be preached at when I go to be entertained. When I want to watch a story, I want to escape from all of that. And if I happen to learn something, if I happen to be affected by that story, it's because it's a really awesome tale, the characters are convincing and compelling, or because I'm drawn in by some amazing visual stimulus. And so we have to weave the gospel into great story, and that will affect people. It's not, it's not a mandate that in every Christian story that somebody gets saved or that somebody encounters Christ. Sometimes we may just be communicating the fact that there is truth, right? Whereas the world says there is no truth. So yeah, don't sacrifice story on the altar of message.
Wow, that's powerful, man. Like, I've never really thought about it like that. But the idea that the parables were just these agricultural and environmental stories, where Jesus was just trying to, make A meet B, you can see that in a lot of the things. Now, of course, he was, imparting massive cosmic truth, heavenly truth that nobody had any idea about. And even then, he was saying, "Hey, these things, they are riddles for a reason. Like,
right.
there's a piece of cheese at the end of this maze if you're willing to go for it." And so I do appreciate a little bit of exploration in my media. Me not having to go, "Oh, yeah, that's easy." I can have this burned into my memory, and I'm sure so many other people do as well. In Avengers Endgame. When, Captain America pulls Mjolnir. Hey, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it, it's like 9,000 years old. But that moment of, we all knew he probably could, but that moment when we fully realized and we saw it in front of us, like it made everybody erupt. Like, that moment was an actual, it was a mountaintop experience for all these nerds out there.
But what made that moment so good was all the setup. Right?
Absolutely.
Going all the way back to Captain America, right? The first Avenger, right? You begin setting up all of these amazing payoffs, and they did a great job, because trying to do setups and payoffs over the course of story arcs that last 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
And, multiple films, really difficult. So hat tip to that team and the teams that did that. But it was because you created this interest, right, with this setup of these characters and these storylines way back 10 years ago before that moment happened. And you continue to kind of bring people along, right? It wasn't about, trying to let people know that Captain America was the best, or that he was the salvation, or it's simply just a payoff. And so, yes, those are the arts, those are the components that create the art of great storytelling. And we've got to do that as believers.
Yeah. And again, going back to the Old Testament, like that's what it is. It is not purely set up, because there's a lot of, wonderful, amazing, magical, just mind-blowing things in the Old Testament. But all that stuff pointing to Jesus,
Right.
that's what we say as Christians. And so to understand that it is an entire story working together, that it is one creative work that culminates in Jesus Christ, like from the back of the book to the front of the book, it all meets, at Jesus.
Yeah, a similar setup and payoff was in the garden, when Jesus says, hey, there's one coming who's going to crush the head of the snake. And then, we see Jesus on the cross, right? That's a similar arc, right? Where we have that early setup, and then years later, thousands of years later, we have that payoff in that Mjolnir moment, right?
Yeah. So. Yeah. And so, you get to do some of that storytelling. And we're going to talk about Brainy Pixel in here in just a second, but I want to ask you really quick.
Sure.
Do you have a favorite genre?
Yeah, I do. So for me, it's speculative fiction. So I absolutely love, for instance, one of the great examples of this is like some of the works of M. Night Shyamalan, right? I love like how M. Night will craft a story and you think it's one thing. Like 2/3 of the way through the movie, you believe that you know what this movie is about. And then there's this left turn moment where everything is turned on its ear and everything becomes something different.
Yeah, you're almost watching two movies at that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That moment is so entrancing to me. It's so intoxicating. And I try to work that into all the stuff that I'm working on personally. I love that because to me, it's smart storytelling. And it almost becomes like the movie when you begin watching it. If you expect it, it becomes like a puzzle you try to figure out as you go along. So it kind of works on multiple levels for me.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's that speculative storytelling. I like telling a story and you think you know what it's about, but then suddenly it shifts and it reveals that it's about something totally different. And that's a great vehicle for revealing truth, especially gospel-centered truth. I co-authored a novel several years ago called H2O, the novel. And it was absolutely a Jesus idea. He gave it to me. There's a whole long story I could go into about that. But the reviews that we've gotten, we wrote this book to be a speculative Christian fiction novel, but it presents as just a kind of a mainstream, woman vision novel, right? There are lots of those out there. So a woman who's having visions and trying to figure them out. But at the kind of the 2/3 in of the book, right, kind of towards the end of Act 2, beginning Act 3, we have this left turn moment where everything pivots in the book and it changes. And we've had hundreds of reviews where primarily women who are reading the book will say things like, I wanted to hate this book because Jesus was in it, but I couldn't stop reading because it was so amazing or so well written. Or, I was following this book along perfectly and I thought it was one thing. And then this woman has a salvation moment, but I couldn't stop reading because I'd fallen in love with the character.
Yeah.
And so there are so many people who have said, hey, I was a non-believer and now this book made me question being a non-believer. And that's the point of story, right? Is we need to have people to engage with something that affects them fundamentally, that drives them towards the truth. Maybe it's not salvation, right? It may just be, I'm going to pick up the Bible and start reading it. That's powerful. And that's the kind of stuff I want to do.
Speculative fiction. I've never heard that phrase before, but it makes so much sense when you say it out loud, because I think that's some of my favorite media, period. Like storytelling in that way. There's a movie out there called Identity. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's kind of like a horror thriller movie.
Sounds like my wheelhouse.
Yeah. Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, good. You should go check out. It's got John Cusack in it.
Okay.
And they end up going to this like motel. Everybody kind of gets broken down at the motel, and people are being brought there. And then they find out that there's a common thread between them, and then it just turns. And
nice.
It's just one of those things, you know.
Like one of my favorite films is Signs by M. Night Shyamalan. Right?
Yeah, dude.
People don't think about it, but yeah, it's great. That's a great line. People don't think about it, but that is one of the most Christian films that has ever been produced by Hollywood, right? Because the providence of God and the sovereignty of God is all over every frame of that movie. It's not in your face. You can watch the movie and totally miss it. But as a believer, if you watch that film and you think about God being in control, you can't miss it. And it's so well done, right? It's it's an alien invasion flick, right? With Mel Gibson. It shouldn't work. It shouldn't work, but it does. It works so well. And that's the example of the kind of stuff that I'm passionate, the kind of storytelling that I'm personally passionate about. We don't get to do a lot of that at Brainy because it's a different brand. But anyway.
I tell people all the time, and I've said it a billion times on this podcast probably, that my favorite Christian movie of all time is The Book of Eli with Denzel Washington.
Yeah, that's a great one. I love that.
It's got one of those moments too, where it just kind of, it waits to the very end to do it, but it's got one.
And it's so powerful.
Oh, man.
I watch that movie probably once a quarter. It's just so good. I love that movie.
So the power in storytelling and understanding that as really there's a lot that you can do by yourself. There's so many stories that you can tell just, a one-man band. But the power of community and storytelling, that's kind of where Brainy Pixel shines, is bringing multiple people together, or even, as we'll probably talk about here in just a minute, helping Christian people find spaces to tell their stories and express their creativity. So let's kind of transition into that. Tell us a little bit about Brainy Pixel. You mentioned at the top of the show, but what is it, not just in concept, but what is it when people are in it, and kind of how do you fit into that?
So Brainy is a business first and foremost. So, we're driven to serve our clients and to make profit, right? We have to keep the lights on and pay the bills. So about 90% of the work that we do is service-based work, where we're working with ministries and organizations and sometimes individuals who have a story to tell, in whatever format. It might be a children's book. It could be an animated music video. It might be a curriculum. It could be a film. It could be an animated film. It could be a visual effects film, right? But they're trying to tell a story, and they need some expertise to bring that to life, whether that expertise is in animation or script development or visual effects or, 3D rigging or what have you. And so, this isn't what we originally created Brainy for, but God has transformed our company into a services company where we help people bring those stories to life. And we can't do that by ourselves. I mean, I started the company with another guy. He's our CEO. His name is Michael. He was my original business partner. We've now got a third partner that we've brought in because we're growing. And even the three of us couldn't do it all on our own. So what we have been blessed to do is bring a community of creatives around us. Generally, these creatives are believers, not always, but I would say probably about 98% of the time they're believers. And we work for various companies, ministries, and organizations trying to do these jobs. And those are contracts that we receive that we then put these creatives on. So we'll have freelancers working on projects, and we're working on 11 different gigs right now.
Oh, wow.
Across all different spectrums, all the way from film to doing logo design, quite literally right now. And so we have to have those amazing creatives to help us do those jobs. And one of the blessings that we've had by becoming an overt Christian animation studio, and that's a whole story, is that we get emails and phone calls and texts weekly. I get about 40 of them a week now from believers, typically all over the world, who are working, at the highest echelons of industry. I have people who are working at Disney or, Blizzard or whatever.
Yeah.
They're emailing me saying, hey, I'm a believer. I'm in this woke workspace. I want out. Can I come to work for Brainy? And I'm like, hey, brother, sister, I'd love to hire you, right? But I need a contract to put you on. So early on, Christ said, this is your mission field, Brannon. And so I meet with these individuals. I give every one of them 30 minutes of my time. I meet with them. I pray with them. I try to understand who God is calling them to be, right? What cranks their tractor, what gets them excited about creating, what their skill sets are. And then I put them into our database. And then when we get an opportunity to bid new work, I go to that database and I try to find the right people to fill the holes to meet the requirements of our clients. And then if we land the work, then I let freelance contracts go and I start putting those people to work. And some of them have been working with us for, 4.5 years now. Some of them work with us for a few months. But we try to minister to these people as we work.
Yeah.
One of the things that Christian creatives get mixed up because you have to pursue money, right? To pay your bills. I get that. But in the pursuit of money, as you're pursuing money, you can't let that become your idol. You can't let that become your goal. And so as you work, you must understand that the people that you're working with are just as much in need of discipleship and ministry as are your clients, as are your family, as are your church body. So we try and build a community around what we're doing. And as we're interacting with these people, we try to witness to them if they're non-believers. If they are believers, we try and grow them in sanctification and discipleship by doing Bible studies. We have prayer times, and growing those creatives is important, but growing Christians is even more important. So that's kind of part of what Brainy has become. And that's really because God has convicted us as a company and said, hey, it's not enough just to grow a great body of creatives. We've also got to strengthen the body of believers as we go, because then those people, they leave Brainy and they become forces within the Christian industry, right? They're out doing their own thing and they're hopefully propagating this philosophy of discipleship and sanctification to others. So it's kind of like a force multiplier. Once they leave us, if they're not working with us anymore or their contract ends, they can go out and replicate themselves. We have to remember the gospel is the point. And that's what we try and do at Brainy.
So your goal, your goal is not to keep people like, hey, you're part of the Brainy Pixel community, whatever, forever. Hey, we'll just kind of keep you on, whatever a freelance version of a retainer might be. We'll keep you in the database. I mean, you're kind of helping people find space to then launch.
We are, absolutely. There's no way we could keep everybody just because of the expense, right? So, for instance, one of the contracts we're working on right now, if we had everybody that we need to do the work on deck at one time, it'd probably close to 90 people. Just the budget won't allow us to have all those 90 people working every single day on things. So what we do is we keep people in the database and we keep in touch with them through our Discord server or through email. And we try to minister to those people. But yeah, we understand that they're going to go off and do other things. And maybe they'll come back and work with us again. Maybe they won't. And that's okay. But while they're under our purview, right, while that sheep is in our sheepfold, we have to minister to them. We have to grow them in their love and sanctification of the word and of Christ. Because if we don't, we'll be held accountable for those people. So,
wow. So can you tell us just some of the projects that you're actually allowed to talk about that aren't under NDAs or something like that you either have worked on or are working on, so that kind of we can understand the scope? Because I think really when you talk about Christian media in animation, there's one thing that comes to mind, and that's VeggieTales. And so what outside of VeggieTales, if even VeggieTales, are people within Brainy Pixel working on?
So right now, and again, this could change tomorrow, right? Because we're constantly bidding new work. So right now we're working on a massive curriculum project. It's a multi-year project, very, very large project where we're doing everything. So our client has kind of given us the foundational scriptures they want us to focus on for this curriculum, and we're designing 52 Sundays worth of curriculum for first through third grades. And we're doing everything, all the conceptual work. We're dreaming up the world, the characters, right? The places where they go, the things that they do. We're doing all the writing. We're doing all the art. We're doing all the layout and design, all the page design. As part of this curriculum, we're doing 2D animation. We're doing 2 styles of 3D animation. We're doing live action shooting. We're doing live action with 2D and 3D elements integrated, in the frame. We've created a set of puppets, and we're doing puppet performances with live music that we've developed, original music, and then we're coordinating all of this together into one massive product that kind of dovetails with an existing curriculum that the customer has. And then also we've added a whole VBS. So we're finishing up a 5-day full-on VBS that dovetails with this curriculum. And this is one big project. So it's massive. We're also working with Covenant Eyes, which is the anti-porn app. Great people. We're doing a little 1-minute advertisement animation for them. Very stylistic, very cool. We're working on 4 different illustration projects at the moment with across 4 different curriculums, different companies. We are doing a commercial, 2D commercial on how Swiss cheese is made for a,
Here we go. Now we're getting into it. All right.
This is a great company. They're well known in the Swiss cheese industry. They come from Switzerland originally, like the great grandfather came from Switzerland. They're all believers. There's no gospel in Swiss cheese that we've been able to find, but we're serving a great gospel family. But it's a great little fun 2D animated commercial. We just finished a 3-minute music video for an individual, a lawyer actually, who by day he's a lawyer, by night he writes silly songs that he sings with his daughter. And so that's out there on the web, George the Baby Dragon. You can go check it out. We did a little 2D animation on that. There's tons of stuff. We're also designing some logos for some people right now. We're doing some script development. We're doing some book layout, interior illustrations, and cover design. So there's a ton of creative opportunities out there for people who want to glorify God. Don't let people tell you there aren't jobs out there, because there are. We're also pitching some original IP, intellectual property, that Brainy has developed and continues to develop. And we're in talks like with Minnow at the moment about producing some original work with Yippee TV. We've already got content on all those platforms. We've actually got content that streams on over 40 different platforms across the world. Some of it's been translated into Arabic and Turkish and Farsi, so it's out there doing gospel work into areas where you can't get Bibles. Praise God. He orchestrated all that. So there's a lot going on at Brainy. I wish I could talk about more, but that's kind of the high level. That's the high level look.
Man, that's fantastic. So, I mean, that's probably getting a lot of juices going for the creatives that are listening to this.
I hope so.
And when I say the creatives, like it's important to understand that we are all called to create in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't necessarily have to be through storytelling or through animation or drawing or sculpting. But just God has called us to be creative in this space. He is creative, and we are created in His image, and that makes you, whomever you are listening to this, it makes you creative in some way, shape, or form. You have something to say to the world around you. But for somebody who is specifically creative in the way of art, illustration, storytelling, script design, that kind of stuff, is Brainy Pixel, I mean, is it invite only, or is it like an open casting call? Like, how, if somebody wanted to, what would the process be to be a part of Brainy Pixel?
We get emails and texts and phone calls all the time. So just go to our website. There are contact forms, I think, on every page of our website. And we'd love to hear from you. Feel free just to send us an email and say, hey, I'm a creative. This is kind of my wheelhouse. This is what I like to do. I'd like to talk to Brannon about maybe coming on board and seeing if I can help in some way. And we'll do a call. I'm going to pray with you. I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to get you to tell me your story and understand who God has made you to be and what you're doing. But really, that's just so I can potentially leverage your skills in a potential job as it comes up. We get asked a lot by our university partners about internships. We do want to open our internships back up. We've done them in the past, But honestly, we're just so busy right now. We don't have the bandwidth because we really view internships as a discipleship. We want to grow you, in the Bible just as much as Blender, right? We want to just work with you and help you to become a stronger believer. And that takes a lot of time and effort. You have to be very intentional. So we've kind of closed those internships for now. But yeah, I'm happy to talk to anybody. And I do. I'm blessed to be able to speak to people who are just graduating high school. Sometimes I get emails from parents who are like, hey, my kid's in middle school and they're thinking about this, about doing this Christian creative thing. Can I talk to you? I can't tell you the number of parents and kids I've got on Zoom calls with and just counseled them and said, hey, look, there is a way for you to do this. There is a way to make a living. Here are the kind of tips and tricks you want to try. I'm still in contact with those people. And, but also top of the line, amazing industry people. I mean, just talked yesterday with a guy who, he's a published author. He's making movies. He's got like 180 books to his name and, he maybe wants to work with us. So, wow. So it doesn't matter where you are in your kind of creative journey. We're happy to talk to you. And I want to kind of underscore something you said earlier, Bubba, because what you said is absolutely true. We are all called to be creative in God's likeness. But I want to speak specifically to the creatives that are out there who feel like they're not being creative. Maybe they're in a job. They're not getting to use those gifts, skills, talents, and abilities right now to glorify God. Maybe you feel like, you're in a dead end spot where you're really scratching your head going, why am I here? Why does God have me in this role? And let me encourage you to know that from my wisdom, and this is something that God has just recently revealed to me, is that you are there for a reason. It might not be to gain more skills in your illustration or your storytelling or your technical prowess with Blender or Maya or what have you, but maybe he's teaching you to be patient. Maybe he's teaching you to deal with a surly boss with love. Maybe he's teaching you that, you need to wait on him and his timing. There is something that he is teaching you right now that he will leverage in you later if you are willing and obedient to receive the lesson. So prayerfully seek God's will in the spot where you are in. God doesn't make mistakes. You are there for a reason. It's part of our job to understand that reason and then submit to obedience and follow him. God, when you are faithful with the small things, God will entrust you larger things. And that may be where you are right now. You may be being, kind of put on the spot to see if you're tested with the small things and if you do well, so that he will then grant you those other things. So really important to understand as a creative. Yeah.
I mean, understanding really for all of us, just the places that God has us at any given moment, that he is not left us nor forsaken us.
Amen. Absolutely.
And so, and even then I'm thinking about, how many people, the answer is all of them, that write stories draw off of the experiences in their lives, the people in their lives, whether they're, the heroes or the villains. Those are all usually rooted in people that they know, or tropes that they've seen in situations that they've been a part of. And so, it's little bits from all over the place.
Yeah, and you may be in that job right now, or that position in your life where you're learning about the story you're going to write later on, right? You're learning the experiences from meeting the people that you're going to use as elements in that later story. That may be why you're there. That's a great point, Bubba.
Yeah, I think about like Hiro Nakamura from the TV show Heroes. Like that is, he was in a dead end job. All he wanted to do was get out of it, and he, his story is that he made it happen. That's right. he thought about it hard enough, and boom, suddenly he's a time traveler. And
Absolutely.
So, I think there's a lot to be drawn out of that in every single situation. And obviously, if you want to talk more about that, Brandon's going to be, like I said, at NCMS. But hey, before we get out of here, if you could go back and tell young Brandon one thing about just what God was going to be doing in your life later on to help prepare you, what would that thing be?
I think for me, it would be become obedient sooner. And again, this is a tough question because it kind of conflicts and conflates with the sovereignty of God, right? Obviously, the choices that I made, God knew that I was going to make them, right? And so he worked things out for, all things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to his purpose. So But I think for me personally, if I could go back, I would say, hey, Brannon, quit being a hard head, bend the knee, right? Bow the brassy neck, as it says, in the Old Testament, and become a believer sooner. I didn't become a believer really until I was 33. So about 20 years ago.
Your Jesus year there.
Yeah, it happened to be. Yep. It's not like I planned it, but, but yeah, so early on, and I can give my testimony if you like, happy to do so. I love giving my testimony, but early on in my life, I figured out how I could pretend to be a Christian and do so efficiently and kind of fly under the radar and live in this Christian space. Again, I grew up in the South, right, in Alabama for the most part, so the buckle of the Bible Belt. So cultural Christianity was totally a thing, it still is. But I could fly under the radar and pretend to be a Christian, but not really be a Christian. And so for me, I wasted a ton of time in my life doing what I thought was important, doing what I wanted to do and not what God wanted me to do. And so I would say, submit sooner, right? If I had to put on a bumper sticker, it would be submit sooner. And I think that's for everybody, not just me, but for everybody. The sooner we can become plugged into the source of truth and love, the source of all wisdom, and then do his will, then the better off not only we would be, our families would be, our communities, our churches, but the world. The world would be better as well.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think that's fantastic. Just get on the bus earlier.
Sure.
Just, however you want to put that, into words for whoever, for our listeners. Hey, Brannon, thank you so much, man, for spending some time with us today. You're a busy guy. You got a lot going on, a lot of irons in the fire. And so thank you for taking a little bit of time out of your day to come and hang out with us and just share your story and to talk about the projects and how God is calling you into so many things that you probably wouldn't have had access to otherwise.
Hey, my pleasure, Bubba. Thanks for having me on. It's always great to see you and chat with you. And maybe in the future we can come back on and talk about some other things that I've got cooking. So,
heck yeah, man! I know you got so much going on.
Right.
And so, if you want to know more about Brannon and what he's doing and how you can get involved with things like Brainy Pixel and meet other creatives and see how God is moving in and through that space, I'm telling you right now, come to NCMS, the Nerd Culture Ministry Summit in April of 2026. Like I said, it's going to be at Colorado Springs, Garden of the Gods, Glen Eyrie Castle. It's fantastic. Brandon, have you ever been to the Garden of the Gods?
I've not. I've never been to Colorado, so I am super excited.
Well, hey, it is our pleasure to get you out to Colorado. And seriously, come out. Registration will be open on September the 8th if you didn't pre-register. By the time this episode comes out, there's like 1 day to pre-register. And so if you would like to do that, you can go to ncmsummit.com/prereg2026. All that information will be in the show notes. But if not, you can just wait until the following Monday on the 8th, and you'll be able to register. We would love to see you there. We've got a lot of great speakers, a lot of great workshops, a lot of great community building opportunities for you to be around other people who are just trying to figure out what it means to love Jesus in a nerd culture space. And like I said, we are all about moving onward this year. We want to take your idea that you have, this thing that is brewing in the front or the back, in the middle of your lizard brain, and bring it to reality. We may not have the answers for you, but man, we want to hopefully have the encouragement and the pathways for you. So come out to the Nerd Culture Ministry Summit, April of 2026 in Colorado Springs. You can get more information on that at ncmsummit.com, and we'll see you there. Hey, Brannon, thanks again so much for hanging out with us. And for everybody else, if no one else tells you this, just remember it's true. Jesus loves you, nerds.
Amen.